Penetration testing, pen testing, ethical hacking, or white hat hacking. They're all names for the same thing. It can be someone internal or external to see if the vulnerabilities we have are exploitable. And they are, if good pen testers, using very similar, if not all the same attack vectors that a real attacker would. They look for the security flaws and weaknesses we have to gain access to our systems, our buildings, or just our data. Most commonly, pen testers is someone you hire from the outside, unless you work in a giant organization. And because they are attacking your organization, it's very critical to have a very clearly defined statement of work. We need to be very clear on the IP ranges they can attack, the time frame, the tools they can use, their point of contact, and how and what they can test. And prior to the penetration test in building the statement of work, we need to involve both our legal department and our senior management. We need the legal team to ensure that what we're hiring them for is actually legal. It doesn't matter if we say it's okay for them to do if they're still breaking the law. And then we need to involve senior management. They need to set the goals for the penetration testing with our assistance. They need to clearly understand why we're doing it, what are we trying to achieve, and they have to sign off on it. They are ultimately liable. And if we are the pen testers, or we're just hiring someone, we're there to find the flaws and the vulnerabilities that are exploitable. We are not there to fix anything. At the end of the penetration testing, we do a long report on everything we found. And then we give recommendations on how to fix it, just like the external audit. And a good pen tester uses multiple attack vectors, just like a real attacker. An attack is an iterative process, just like agile project planning is. We try this, that didn't work, then we tweak it a little, then we tried that didn't work, then we tried this, then we tweak it a little, then we try that. And every step we learn something new so we can design and make a much better attack. The illustration over here on the right is a good visual on how it's an iterative process. We start with discovery, we find the vulnerabilities, we design the attack, then we try to gain access to the network, then we try to escalate our privileges, we do system browsing, and then when we have all that knowledge, we often go back to discovery again. And we keep doing that until we get some sort of admin access. At this point, we can install additional tools that's going to help our attack, and then often we go back to gaining access. We've compromised one part of the system. Now can we use that to compromise more? And we keep going until we get the result we want. If we're a penetration tester, at the end of it, we would then do our reporting, what we found, and how they can fix it. If we're an actual attacker, this is where they install the rootkits, the backdoors, delete the logs, and tries to hide any trace that they were there. So we start with planning, then reconnaissance, then we do the scanning or enumeration, vulnerability assessment, exploit, and reporting. And because the penetration tester has that very clear statement of work, they do obviously not compromise our system or the data integrity. An actual attacker or a black hat hacker would not care about that. It's also very common for the penetration tester not to be allowed to access actual data. We might make a dummy file in a folder that contains actual patient data. If they can prove they reached their goal and were able to alter or at least see the data on the dummy folder or file, then they reach their target, meaning the actual data we have there is vulnerable. It is also normal for a statement of work to have clearly defined hours of when they're allowed to attack, because some of the methods they use might be intrusive. If we're a 9-to-5 business, they might be allowed to attack after 7 or 9 or whenever our backups are done, or in a maintenance window. Everything they do outside of the social engineering can still be done at that time, and it doesn't have a disruptive impact on our business. We can also choose to have the penetration testers attack our DR environment or disaster recovery. While it might find some of the same security flaws that we would have in our production environment, it is often less effective because most DR environments are not fully spec'd copies of the production environment. So the two environments in most cases will not have the same vulnerabilities. Does that give you a better understanding of why the statement of work is so important? It's not just us making sure that it doesn't have an adverse effect on our production environments. It's also us ensuring that it will have a legal standing if the penetration testing company does something they're not supposed to do. If it's not in the contract, they're not allowed to do it. If they do it anyways, then we can probably sue them. And the amount of knowledge that a penetration tester has of our environment can also vary widely. A black box penetration test or zero knowledge penetration test, the attacker has no knowledge of the organization other than what's publicly available. They start from the same point that an external attacker would. White box, crystal box, clear box penetration testing is full knowledge. In this case, the attacker has the knowledge that a privileged internal employee would have. They know things about the infrastructure architecture, and they often had administrator access. And then finally, gray box testing. You can see it spelled both with an A or an E, the US and the UK version. Same thing, in this case, the attacker has partial knowledge. They would have the limited knowledge that a regular employee would have and the same access rights. A regular internal employee would not know our network topologies, but they would be on our network. And do not confuse the white, gray, and black box testing with white, gray, and black hat hackers. A white hat hacker, that's the pen tester, the ethical hacker. A black hat hacker, that's the malicious attacker that tries to attack our system, access our data, who are looking for the flaws and trying to exploit them. They can also at times be referred to as crackers. They crack the code. And then finally the gray hats. They're somewhere in the middle, the gray area between black and white. They might find a vulnerability somehow, not saying how they do it, then notify the company that made the software, here's a vulnerability, please fix it. If the company does not, they might just publicize it, or they might do that to begin with. Where they are on the spectrum of black and white is, of course, dependent on the person.